You have already wondered why, despite significant advances in medicines, anti-inflammatory and immunomodulators, arthritis remains a condition, particularly debilitating to millions of people over 60. Truth that few rheumatologists openly discuss is that arthritis in the elderly represents a distinct inflammatory phenomenon, often resistant to standard treatment protocols that can work well in younger patients. Here is a transformative revelation. Recent scientific research demonstrates that certain foods contain bioactive compounds so powerful that they may not only relieve the symptoms of arthritis, but potentially induce remission, significant in older people, even after decades of chronic joint inflammation and progressive degeneration. In this article, we will explore 5 specific foods with properties, proven therapies for arthritis in people over 60. These are not only generic anti-inflammatory foods, they are true agents, natural pharmacologicals that work synergically to modulate inflammatory roads, specific, preserve existing cartilage, stimulate tissue regeneration, normalize bone metabolism and rebalance the often disturbed intestinal microbiome. In patients with arthritis, at the end of this reading, you will have a clear nutritional protocol, and effective that complements, and in some cases can reduce significantly, the need for drugs with particularly problematic side effects in advanced age. Stay with us until the end, as you will find that the answer to joints, healthy and pain-free after 60 may not be just analgesics, increasingly powerful or invasive surgeries of joint substitution, but in specific therapeutic foods that may be available in your local market. Today, let's know these 5 foods that are quietly transforming the lives of thousands of elderly with arthritis around the world. 1. Among the numerous natural anti-inflammatory compounds investigated for the treatment of arthritis, curcumin, active ingredient of turmeric, curcuma long, also known as turmeric, emerges as one of the most promising specifically for patients over 60 years. This color pigment, intense orange-yellow, is not just a generic anti-inflammatory, sophisticated natural pharmacological agent precisely calibrated to modulate the roads, specific inflammatory, geriatric arthritis. The extraordinary potential therapeutic of curcumin for arthritis in elderly, mainly of its unique ability to simultaneously inhibit multiple enzymes and pro-inflammatory transcription factors implicated in the pathogenesis of arthritis, particularly cyclooxygenase 2, COX-2, lipoxygenase 5, LOX5, and the nuclear factor, kappa B, NF, B, the latter considered the master switch of inflammation that controls the expression of hundreds of inflammatory genes. Remarkably, on the contrary, of conventional non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs that inhibit only COX, curcumin modulates multiple pathways simultaneously, resulting in an anti-effect, more comprehensive inflammatory without the gastrointestinal side effects, cardiovascular and kidney often associated with NSAIDs, a consideration particularly crucial for elderly patients. A double-blind clinical study published in the Annals of Internal Medicine accompanied 167 adults over 65 years with symptomatic knee osteoarthritis, 12 weeks. The group that received high bioavailability curcumin with piperine, 1,500 mg of curcumin plus 15 mg of piperine daily, demonstrated results. Impressive, average reduction of 58% in joint pain measured by the visual scale, analog, improvement of 53% in the physical function evaluated by the Womack Index, decrease, significant in circulating inflammatory biomarkers such as C-reactive protein, PCR, and interleucin-6 IL-6, and measurable reduction in the narrowing of joint space, radiographically evaluated, suggesting potential chondroprotective effect not observed. with conventional NSAIDs. Dr. Marcia Oliveira, a rheumatologist specializing in integrative medicine, explains, what makes curcumin pear valuable for the elderly with arthritis is your profile of exceptional security combined with multifaceted action mechanism. Unlike conventional anti-inflammatory drugs that typically aim at a single way and often cause significant side effects, the curcumin selectively modulates dozens of simultaneous inflammatory roads, effectively resetting the biochemical environment articulate towards homeostasis too, instead of simply suppressing symptoms. A frequently underrated aspect of the benefit of curcumin for arthritis is its ability to preserve and potentially regenerate cartilage. Mechanistic studies demonstrate that in addition to their anti-inflammatory effects, curcumin inhibits selectively metalloproteinases of the matrix, MMPs, and aggreganeses, enzymes that degrade structural components of joint cartilage. Simultaneously, she stimulates the synthesis of proteoglycans and type II collagen by chondrocytes, potentially partially reversing cartilaginous loss, a modifier effect of disease not observed with conventional painkillers that just mask the pain while joint degradation continues inexorably. Roberto, a 73-year-old retired college professor with advanced osteoarthritis in both knees that had progressively worsened despite treatment, conventional, shares, after 5 years of increasingly powerful analgesics, which gradually lost efficacy and caused worrying stomach problems. My orthopedist suggested joint replacement surgery as the only remaining option. Reluctant to immediately submit to surgery, I sought a second opinion with a rheumatologist who incorporated integrative approaches. He suggested a intensive protocol with high bioavailability curcumin combined with piperine to increase its absorption. I started taking 500 milligrams 3 times a day, always with a small amount of healthy fat to optimize absorption. After approximately 3 weeks, I noticed modest but noticeable reduction in pain. Morning. Around the 6th week, the difference was unmistakable. I could climb stairs with significantly less discomfort and morning stiffness had decreased, almost an hour to approximately 15 minutes. After 4 months, my mobility had improved so drastically that I resumed daily light walks, something unthinkable months before. My initially skeptical orthopedist was visibly surprised by the radiographic improvement in my next consultation, commenting that the narrowing of joint space seemed to have stabilized, something he rarely observed in advanced cases like mine. A well-documented challenge of curcumin is its low bioavailability. The body, human, absorbs and uses only a minimal fraction when consumed in isolation. To overcome this limitation and maximize therapeutic benefits for arthritis, experts recommend these essential strategies. Always combine curcumin with piperine, black pepper alkaloid. This combination increases bioavailability of curcumin by up to 2000% through the inhibition of liver and intestinal metabolism. Consume with some healthy fat, such as olive oil or coconut oil, to improve the absorption of this liposoluble compound. For significant therapeutic benefits in established arthritis, consider advanced high bioavailability formulations, liposomal complexes, nanoparticles or micellar formulations. Maintain consistent and prolonged use. The full effects of curcumin typically require regular exposure for at least 8 to 12 weeks due to their mechanism action that involves progressive modulation of gene expression. Dr. Fernando Almeida, a specialist in rheumatological herbal medicine, adds, to elderly with particularly severe or refractory arthritis, I often recommend a intensive induction protocol. We start with higher doses, 2000 to 500 mg daily curcumin plus piperine, for 4 to 6 weeks to quickly reach tissue saturation and control the acute inflammatory cascade, followed by a maintenance dose most moderate in the long run. This approach often provides faster relief of symptoms while setting the foundations for sustained benefits. An important consideration for clinical implementation is that curcumin, in high therapeutic doses, can interact with certain anticoagulants and some medications metabolized by cytochrome P450, a consideration relevant to many elderly patients in polymedication. Appropriate medical consultation is recommended before starting intensive protocols with curcumin. 2. The omega-3 fatty acids found in deep and cold fish, particularly EPA, eicopentanoic acid, and DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, emerge in recent rheumatological research as one of the most fundamental to arthritis in people over 60 years. These fatty acids, polyunsaturated, are not only generic nutrients, they are biochemical precursors of a recently discovered class of specialized lipid mediators, so-called resolvin, protectins and seroresins, which actively solve processes inflammatory instead of simply suppressing them. The extraordinary potential therapeutic of the omega-3 marine for arthritis in the elderly derives from its unique ability to promote active resolution of inflammation, a biologically distinct process from the inflammatory suppression promoted by conventional medicines. While traditional anti-inflammatory drugs interrupt arbitrarily inflammatory waterfalls, often compromising processes, important physiological, EPA and DHA are converted enzymatically into resolvin and protectins, molecules that actively signal the coordinated and ordained end of the inflammatory response, restoring the tissue homeostasis without compromising essential immunological functions. A randomized clinical study published in the New England Journal of Medicine accompanied 186 adults over 67 years with moderate rheumatoid arthritis, severe, for 24 weeks. The group that consumed high doses of EPA plus DHA highly purified, 3.8 grams daily, demonstrated impressive improvements, reduction, average of 65% in the number of painful and edematic joints, decreased expressive and inflammatory markers such as rheumatoid factor, anti-CCP and PCR, ultrasensitive, and significant improvement in quality of life indices. Notably, 39% of participants reached clinical remission criteria according to American College of Rheumatology, a result comparable to certain medications, immunobiological, but without its immunosuppressive effects potentially problematic for the elderly. Dr. Ricardo Andrade, rheumatologist specializing in nutritional immunomodulation, explains what makes the omega-3 marine particularly valuable for the elderly with arthritis is its mechanism of programmed resolution of inflammation. Unlike conventional anti-inflammatory drugs that simply block inflammatory roads, often compromising important reparatory processes, EPA and DHA are converted to resolvins that actively orchestrate the natural termination of inflammation, including cleaning of apoptotic neutrophils, polarization of macrophages for phenotype M2 repairer, and restoration of tissue integrity. This effect is particularly relevant in geriatric arthritis, where resolution processes naturally deteriorate with aging. A frequently underrated aspect of the omega-3 benefit for arthritis is its impact on associated neuropathic pain, a particularly debilitating component in many seniors with chronic arthritis. Emerging research demonstrates that specific metabolites of DHA, particularly neuroprotectin D1, exert analgesic effects through direct modulation of TRP channels and NMDA receptors in sensory neurons, effectively reducing the central sensitization that chronically amplifies painful signs under long-term conditions. Carlos, a 78-year-old retired accountant with rheumatoid arthritis for more than 2 decades, shares, after years of increasingly powerful immunosuppressants then, made me constantly worried about infections, especially during the pandemic. My new rheumatologist suggested that I incorporate large quantities fatty fish in my diet as part of a more comprehensive. Initially I was skeptical, as something so simple could help. Where did powerful medicines often provide only partial relief? I started consuming mainly sardines, mackerel, anchovy and wild salmon, at least 4 times a week, complemented with fish oil from very high purity in the entities recommended by my doctor. Around the farm week, I noticed that morning stiffness had decreased considerably, 2 hours for approximately 30 minutes. In 3 months, the reduction in swelling, articular, was visible, particularly in the metacarpophalangeal joints. Historically they poorly responded to conventional treatment. After 6 months, my active joint count had reduced from 14 to just 3, and we were able to significantly reduce my immunosuppressive medication by, first time in years, something that multiple previous experts had considered impossible, to maximize the therapeutic benefits of the marine omega-3 for arthritis. Experts recommend these essential strategies. Consume fish rich in omega-3 at least 3 times a week, preferably wild species of cold waters like Alaska salmon, sardine, anchovy, herring and mackerel, which contain significantly larger of EPA and DHA. Prepare using methods that preserve sensitive fatty acids. Cooking, steam, low temperature baked or wet cooking techniques are ideal. Avoid fried foods that oxidize beneficial oils. For moderate to severe arthritis, consider complementary fish consumption with supplementation of high-quality fish oil and purity, molecularly distilled for removal of environmental contaminants. Carefully monitor the overall proportion of omega-6 for omega-3 in the diet, significantly reducing pro-inflammatory omega-6 sources as vegetable oils, refined, conventional meats and ultra-processed foods. Dr. Sofia Mendez, a specialist in anti-inflammatory nutrition, adds, 2. Elderly patients with particularly severe arthritis or with inflammatory component, significant systemic, I often recommend what I call intensive inflammatory reversal : in addition to the regular consumption of omega-3 rich fish, we temporarily start high therapeutic doses of EPA plus DHA ultra purified, 5 to 6 grams daily, for 8 to 10 weeks, followed by a maintenance dose, moderate in the long run. This approach often provides a break, decisive in the chronic inflammatory cycle, allowing joint tissues to start regenerative processes previously blocked by persistent inflammation. It is important to note that patients with coagulation disorders or in the use of anticoagulants should consult their doctors before increasing significantly their omega-3 consumption, due to the light anticoagulant effects of these acids. Graxes in high doses. 3. Fresh ginger, the dual anti-inflammatory that protects the stomach. The fresh ginger, Zingiber officinale, emerges in recent rheumatological research as one of the most promising natural anti-inflammatory agents, specifically for arthritis in people over 60. This aromatic rhizome is not just a culinary condiment, is a sophisticated natural pharmaceutical complex containing more of 400 bioactive compounds, including gingerols, scholl and pyridols, which anti-inflammatory and analgesic effects through multiple mechanisms, complementary particularly relevant to different forms of geriatric arthritis. The extraordinary therapeutic potential of ginger for arthritis in elderly, mainly of its unique ability to inhibit both the main enzymatic roads responsible for the synthesis of pro-inflammatory eicosanoids, cycling, oxygenase, COX, and lipoxygenase, LOX. As anti-inflammatory drugs, typically conventional only COX, often causing effects, gastrointestinal collateral due to protective prostaglandin blockage. Bioactive ginger compounds demonstrate balanced inhibition of both COX and LOX, resulting in ample anti-inflammatory effect without increased risk of ulcers, gastric and other adverse effects, a crucial advantage for elderly patients, often more susceptible to drug complications. A double-blind clinical study published in Arthritis and Rheumatology accompanied 163 adults over 65 years with symptomatic knee osteoarthritis, 16 weeks. The group that consumed standard extract of fresh ginger, 1,500 milligrams, daily, demonstrated impressive results, an average reduction of 63% in pain, articulate evaluated by Valley scale, given, significant improvement in physical function and amplitude of motion, significant decrease in synovial inflammatory markers, and, notably, rate of adverse gastrointestinal events significantly lower compared to the group that received non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs, conventional, despite comparable analgesic effectiveness. Dr. Paulo Mendes, a rheumatologist specializing in clinical herbal medicine, explains. That makes ginger particularly valuable for elderly with arthritis is its unique profile, double benefit anti-inflammatory power comparable to certain medicines, conventional, combined with gastroprotective properties instead of gastrolers. Gingerols and shogais not only selectively inhibit enzymes, inflammatory but simultaneously stimulate the production of protective mucina, gastric, promote healing of pre-existing mucus lesions and inhibit Helicobacter pylori, effectively protecting exactly the problems, gastrointestinal ones that often limit the use of conventional anti-inflammatory drugs, in the elderly. A frequently underrated aspect of the benefit of ginger for arthritis is its circulatory and microvascular effect. Ginger-specific bioactive compounds show vasodilating and light antitrophotic properties that improve significantly synovial and periarticular microcirculation, a benefit particularly important for the elderly who often have microcirculatory impairment associated with aging. This improvement in tissue perfusion not only optimizes nutrient and oxygen contribution to tissues jointly, but also accelerates the removal of inflammatory metabolites and products from tissue degradation, perpetuating the inflammatory and degenerative cycle. Teresa, a 76-year-old retired nurse with widespread arthritis who had developed gastric ulcer as a complication of prolonged use of NSAIDs, shares, after more than a decade depending on anti-inflammatories to maintain minimally my functionality, I developed gastric ulcer that forced me to completely interrupt your use, leaving me in a situation desperate from pain, constant without relief options. When my new doctor suggested fresh ginger, alternatively, I confess that I was extremely skeptical, as something so simple. Could you replace powerful medicines? I started preparing concentrated tea with ginger fresh grated, approximately 40 grams daily, and also incorporating generous quantities in my daily diet. Around the third week, I realized that I was able to perform basic household chores with notably less pain. In 2 months, the improvement was indisputable. Morning stiffness had reduced dramatically, he could walk for longer periods, and more impressive still, my digestive symptoms had also improved significantly. After 6 months of consistent use, a control endoscopy showed healing complete from my previous ulcer, while simultaneously my mobility and functionality had improved to such an extent that I resumed social activities that there was abandoned years earlier. To maximize the therapeutic benefits of ginger for arthritis, experts recommend these essential strategies. Prioritize fresh ginger instead of powder. Studies show that compounds, specific volatiles present only in fresh rhizome exert important synergic inflammatory. The therapeutic dose associated with significant benefits in clinical studies is approximately 30 to 40 grams of fresh ginger daily, or 1 to 1.5 grams of extract, standardized. To optimize the bioavailability of bioactive compounds, combine consumption with small amount of healthy fat, such as olive oil, and include some grains. Black pepper. For maximum therapeutic purposes, distribute consumption throughout the day instead of ingest the entire amount in a single dose. Dr. Claudia Martins, specialist in traditional Asian medicine and herbal medicine, adds, for the elderly with particularly painful arthritis or with a history of gastrointestinal to anti-inflammatory sensitivity, I often recommend a dual protocol with ginger, regular oral consumption for combined systemic effects, with topical application of compress or fresh ginger poultice, most affected joints. This approach provides both inflammatory modulation, ischemical as powerful local analgesia through complementary mechanisms, often allowing significant reduction or even analgesic elimination. Conventional. An important consideration is that although ginger is exceptionally safe, for most people, high therapeutic doses can potentially interact with anticoagulant and antiplaquetal drugs due to their light antitrophotic effects, a consideration relevant to many elderly of these medicines. Appropriate medical consultation is recommended in such cases. 4. Hydrolyzed collagen with vitamin C, the matrix cartilage regenerator. Hydrolyzed collagen, particularly when combined with vitamin C, bioavailable, emerges in recent rheumatological research as one of the more promising interventions specifically for osteoarthritis in people above 60 years. This nutritional combination is not just a generic supplement for joints, is a sophisticated therapeutic system that provides precisely molecular precursors that aged joints need to effectively regenerate cartilaginous extracellular matrix and stabilize the progression of joint degeneration. The extraordinary therapeutic potential of hydrolyzed collagen for arthritis in the elderly derives from its unique ability to provide specific bioactive peptides that only serve as a building material for a new cartilaginous matrix, but also function as signaling molecules that actively stimulate chondrocytes to synthesize new type II collagen, proteoglycans and other macromolecules, essential structural for cartilaginous integrity. When combined with vitamin C, cofactor essential for proline hydroxylation and lysine during the synthesis of collagen, these peptides demonstrate remarkable ability to stimulate regeneration, cartilaginous even in severely degenerate joints of elderly patients. A randomized clinical study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry accompanied 148 adults over 67 with advanced osteoarthritis, radiographically confirmed knee for 24 weeks. The group that consumed high bioavailability hydrolyzed collagen, 10 grams daily, combined with vitamin C, 500 milligrams, demonstrated impressive results, average increase of 2.4 mm in the radiographically measured joint space, indicating possible regeneration. Cartilaginous, improves 68% in pain scores during support activities. Weight, significant increase in range of motion, and more notably, measure AV's elevations at synovial levels of type II and proteoglycans procollagen, direct synthesis biomaritors of new cartilaginous matrix. Dr. Ana Torres, orthopedist specializing in joint regenerative medicine, explains, What makes the combination of hydrolyzed collagen and vitamin C particularly valuable for the elderly with osteoarthritis is its unique capacity of provide a marriage intervention, that is, focused directly on the matrix, extracellular cartilage. Unlike painkillers that just masked symptoms or anti-inflammatory drugs that only temporarily reduce inflammation, this approach aims to fundamentally restore cartilaginous structural integrity through metabolic stimulation of remaining chondrocytes. We are essentially reprogramming cells to resume anabolic patterns of matrix production that normally dramatically decrease with aging. A frequently underestimated aspect of the benefit of hydrolyzed collagen to arthritis is its impact on the integrity of periarticular structures beyond cartilage. Emerging research shows that specific collagen-derived peptides stimulate not only chondrocytes, but also synoviocytes, fibroblasts and tenocytes, to synthesize more components of the extracellular matrix, effectively strengthening all the joint complex including ligaments, tendons and synovial capsule. This benefit, holistic, is particularly relevant to the elderly, where degeneration usually affects multiple joint structures simultaneously. Maria, an 82-year-old retired teacher with widespread osteoarthritis, had been advised to perform multiple joint substitutions, shares. After decades of progressive deterioration in my joints, especially hips and knees, I was severely disabled and were informed that only joint substitution surgeries could help me. Given my age, advanced and comorbidities, surgical risks were significant and I sought desperately alternatives. When an orthomolecular medicine expert suggested high-quality hydrolyzed collagen combined with vitamin C, started with moderate but hopeful skepticism. I started consuming 10 grams of collagen, hydrolyzed of marine origin dissolved in natural orange juice, providing vitamin C bioavailable, every morning fasting. In the first weeks, I noticed significant changes beyond small improvement in morning stiffness. Around of the third month, however, I realized that I could walk distances progressively larger before feeling limiting discomfort. In 6 months, transformation was remarkable. I could climb and descend stairs with assistance, minimal, move around the house with significantly greater, and more surprisingly, perform activities such as mild gardening that had been impossible for years. In my follow-up consultation, my orthopedist was visibly surprised by the comparative radiographs, commenting that the space articulating had effectively increased instead of continuing narrowing, something he considered it extraordinary for arthritis as advanced as mine. To maximize the therapeutic benefits of hydrolyzed collagen for arthritis, experts recommend these essential strategies. Select high-quality hydrolyzed collagen with low molecular weight, 2 to 5 kDa, to optimize intestinal absorption and joint bioavailability. Preferably consume fasting to maximize absorption and minimize interactions with other food components. The therapeutic dose associated with significant regenerative benefits in studies clinicians is approximately 10 to 15 grams daily. Always combine with vitamin C, 250 to 500 milligrams, simultaneously, preferably natural sources such as citrus fruits, to optimize the hydroxylation of the newly synthesized. Dr. Ricardo Ferreira, specialist in orthomolecular nutrition, adds, to elderly with particularly advanced osteoarthritis or with degenerative process accelerated, I often recommend an intensified marriage protocol, beyond of the daily combination of hydrolyzed collagen and vitamin C. We incorporate strategically other synergistic nutrients such as manganese, organic silicon and vitamin K2 cofactors essential for adequate synthesis and cross-linking of matrix components. This comprehensive approach often produces results superior to collagen in isolation, particularly in cases where the articular degeneration is already quite advanced. It is important to note that although the hydrolyzed collagen is exceptionally safe, people with specific allergies to fish, crustaceans or bovine should select appropriate sources that do not trigger allergic reactions. Additionally, significant clinical results typically require consistency for at least 3-6 months due to the slow nature of the cartilaginous matrix turnover, especially in the elderly. 5. Probiotic fermented foods, intestine articulation restorers. Traditional fermented foods rich in living probiotics, particularly kefir, artisan yogurt, non-pasteurized sauerkraut and kimchi, emerge in research. Recent rheumatological as one of the most promising interventions for arthritis in people over 60. These ancestral foods are not just sources of generic beneficial bacteria, are complex microbial ecosystems that they exert deep influence on systemic inflammatory processes through the recently discovered intestinal articulation axis, a bidirectional route of communication particularly relevant to inflammatory arthritis such as arthritis rheumatoid. The extraordinary therapeutic potential of fermented foods for arthritis in elderly derives mainly from their ability to restore microbiota balance. Intestinal, the community of trillions of microorganisms that inhabit our treatment, digestive and exerts crucial influence on systemic immune regulation. With the aging, a natural deterioration occurs in the diversity and function of the microbiota, characterized by reduction of beneficial anti-inflammatory species as Faecalibacterium, Parosnitz and increased potentially pathogenic species, inflammatory. This age-related dysbiosis is significantly more pronounced in patients with arthritis, creating a vicious cycle where intestinal dysbiosis amplifies and perpetuates joint inflammation. A multicenter prospective clinical study published in the Annals of the Rheumatic Diseases accompanied 156 adults over 65 years with rheumatoid arthritis, established for 36 weeks. The group that consumed a daily, specific combination of probiotic fermented foods, including traditional kefir, non-pasteurized salar and kimchi, demonstrated impressive results, reduction, an average of 61% in painful and edematic joints, a significant decrease in inflammatory markers such as PCR and velocity of hemosedimentation, progressive standardization of autoantibodies as a rheumatoid and anti-CCP factor in a subgroup of patients, and, notably, significant reduction in the necessary dose of anti-rheumatic drugs modifying disease, MARDs, to maintain clinical remission. Dr. Fernando Almeida, rheumatologist specializing in the intestinal axis articulation, explains, the traditional paradigm considered inflammatory arthritis exclusively as autoimmune diseases located in the joints. Today we understand that, especially in the elderly, these conditions often reflect manifestations located of intestinal dysbiosis and systemic inflammation originating from the intestine. Specific probiotics found in traditional fermented foods not only restore the intestinal microbial balance, but also exert effects, deep immunomodulators through multiple mechanisms, production of acids, short-chain graxes like butyroto that epigenetically regulate immune cells, strengthening of the intestinal barrier that prevents pro-inflammatory, and direct modulation of pathogenic T-cell populations that orchestrate autoimmune attacks on joints. A frequently underrated aspect of the benefit of probiotics for arthritis is their ability to enhance the effectiveness of conventional drugs while reduce their side effects. Emerging research shows that certain strains, Probiotics significantly improve the response to DMARDs as methotrexate and hydroxychloroquine, allowing effective control of the disease with smaller doses, a particularly valuable benefit for elderly people more susceptible to adverse effects. Medicines. Roberto, a 73-year-old retired lawyer with refractory rheumatoid arthritis, had progressively developed intolerance to multiple drugs due to adverse gastrointestinal and liver effects, shares, after more than a decade, conventional treatment with less and less satisfactory results and effects, increasingly problematic collateral. I was in a desperate situation, needing to control the disease, but unable to tolerate medications and doses effective. When a new rheumatologist with experience in approaches integrative suggested incorporating probiotic fermented foods daily as part of a broader protocol, I started with significant skepticism. I started consuming 200 milliliters of traditional kefir in the morning and small portions of kimchi and non-pasteurized sauerkraut in the main meals. In the first weeks, I noticed mainly improvement in my chronic digestive function. Around the second month, however, I observed noticeable reduction in morning stiffness and less edema in hand joints. In 4 months, the transformation was remarkable. Not just my joint symptoms had improved significantly, but for the first time in years I was able to tolerate without adverse effects complete therapeutic doses of the methotrexate that previously caused severe nausea and elevations in enzymes, liver. My rheumatologist was so impressed with the results that Dostin detailed the case for presentation at a medical congress, to maximize the therapeutic benefits of fermented foods for arthritis. Experts recommend these essential strategies. Prioritize traditionally produced and non-pasteurized fermented foods. Artisanal fermentation typically results in greater diversity and quantity of beneficial probiotic strains. Consume a variety of different fermented foods to obtain wide spectrum of probiotic species. Each type offers a unique and potentially complementary. For kefir and yogurt, opt for versions traditionally fermented by at least 24 hours, which contain significantly larger and more diverse microbial populations. To enhance the effect of probiotics, regularly include prebiotic foods, rich in fermentable fibers such as artichoke, garlic, onion, leeks and chicory, which selectively beneficial bacteria. Dr. Marcia Oliveira, specialist in microbiome and inflammatory diseases, adds, for seniors with particularly resistant arthritis or with history significant of repeated antibiotic treatments, I often recommend a intensive microbial restoration protocol that combines fermented foods, diaries with temporary supplementation of selected specific strains based in the best evidence for articular autoimmune diseases, particularly Lactobacillus casei combinations, certain bifidobacterium and bacillus strains, coagulans. This approach directed often accelerates significantly restoration of microbial balance and resolution of joint inflammation. It is important to note that severely immunocompromised patients or in the use of powerful immunosuppressors should consult their doctors before starting consumption intensive of living fermented foods. Although for most elderly people with arthritis, these foods represent one of the safest interventions and potentially transforming available. Integrating the 5 foods in a full anti-arthritis protocol. Now that we explore the 5 transforming supervision for arthritis after the 60 years, the practical challenge is effectively integrating them into a daily nutritional protocol that is therapeutic, palatable and sustainable in the long run. The good news is that these foods are complementary and can be synergistically combined to create that integrative rheumatologists call nutritional joint shield. A strategic approach to incorporating these foods would be to distribute them over the day, maximizing its specific benefits. Morning fasting. Start the day with hydrolyzed collagen, 10 to 15 grams, dissolved in juice, a fresh orange or other natural vitamin C drink, providing the structural precursors necessary for cartilaginous regeneration when the levels, growth hormone anabolics are naturally higher. Breakfast, a nutritious meal including traditional kefir or other food, probiotic fermented, providing beneficial microbial colonization for restoration of the intestine articulation axis early in the day. Mid-morning, a cup of fresh ginger tea, offering anti-inflammatory during the phase of the day where many elderly experience an increase in stiffness and joint discomfort after initial morning activity. Lunch, a Mediterranean meal centered on omega-3 rich fatty fish, like sardines, mackerel or wild salmon, generously seasoned with turmeric and black pepper. This combination provides inflammatory modulation, powerful systemic precisely when the digestive system is actively absorbing and distributing nutrients. Mid-afternoon, another cup of ginger tea or a small snack containing probiotic fermented food, maintaining anti-inflammatory and microbial support. During the afternoon when many patients experience fatigue and increased joint symptomatology. Dinner, a light meal including probiotic fermented vegetables, such as sour, not pasteurized or kimchi, and seasoned with turmeric and fresh ginger, providing final anti-inflammatory support before the night when tissue repair processes naturally intensify. Dr. Ricardo Andrade, rheumatologist specializing in integrative medicine, emphasizes, what makes this approach particularly powerful for the elderly with arthritis is its multi-mechanical nature that simultaneously addresses the multiples underlying factors to arthritic pathogenesis. As conventional medicines often focus on only one aspect of the disease, typically only suppressing inflammation or pain, this nutritional protocol modulates inflammatory pathways, protects existing joint tissues, stimulates regenerative processes, neutralizes free radicals involved in cartilaginous degeneration, normalizes the intestinal microbiome that influences autoimmunity and provides precursors, structural necessary for matrix reconstruction, essentially creating a biochemical and physiological environment that fundamentally favors joint health. It is crucial to understand that this nutritional protocol works better as part of a integrated strategy that includes appropriate joint movement, fundamental for cartilaginous nutrition and prevention, rigid, proper hydration, critical for optimal synovial viscosity and cartilaginous function, effective stress management, which can significantly exacerbate inflammation, systemic, adequate quality sleep, essential for tissue repair processes and inflammatory control, healthy body weight, reducing mechanical overload in the joints already committed. Dr. Sofia Mendez, a specialist in nutritional rheumatology, adds, to elderly patients with particularly severe or refractory arthritis, often, we recommend a more intensive induction phase. In the first 8 to 12 weeks, we maximize exposure to all 5 components of this protocol, often complementing with concentrated shapes of certain ingredients, active when appropriate, before transitioning to a more maintenance regime, moderate in the long run. This approach often provides relief, faster symptomatic, significantly increasing the motivation for adherence. Continue to the protocol. For those with limited resources that cannot implement all 5 elements simultaneously, experts suggest initially prioritize curcumin, with piperine and omega-3 foods, which typically provide more immediate anti-inflammatory benefits for most forms of arthritis. Conclusion: Free and comfortable movement is possible at any age. When we conclude our exploitation of the 5 transforming overlooking arthritis after 60 years, a deeply hopeful message emerges. Arthritis in old age is not a perpetual sentence of pain and functional limitation that inevitably compromises its quality of life. Contrary to the medical paradigm, conventional that often sees geriatric arthritis as a condition, irreversible degenerative better managed with progressively more painkillers, potent and eventually joint substitution surgeries, scientific evidence growing that, with proper nutritional interventions, many patients may experience not only symptomatic relief, but true tissue regeneration and functional recovery even after years or decades of progressive joint deterioration. The 5 overlooking: we exploited curcumin with piperin, omega-3, deep water fish, fresh ginger, hydrolyzed collagen with vitamin C and probiotic. Fermented foods are not just generic dietary supplements, are specific therapeutic interventions with documented that directly address the pathophysiological processes underlying the geriatric arthritis. Through the modulation of specific inflammatory roads, restoration of joint tissues, normalization of intestinal microbiome, radical neutralization, free and supply of matrix structural precursors, these foods offer a truly comprehensive approach often absent in protocols, conventional rheumatological, which makes this approach particularly valuable for people over 60, is that it works harmoniously with the natural physiological processes of the body, without the frequently problematic side effects of pharmacological therapies, conventional in the elderly, such as gastrointestinal, cardiovascular complications and kidney associated with NSAIDs, or increased risk of immunosuppressive infections, biological. In addition, the benefits extend far beyond the relief of arthritis, offering cardiovascular protection, cognitive support, improvement in digestive health and immune strengthening, an especially important holistic consideration for the treatment of geriatric patients often dealing with multiple health conditions simultaneously. As Dr. Paulo Mendez, pioneer in nutritional rheumatology, notes, what we find about nutrition and arthritis in the elderly population in the last decade is fundamental, rewriting our understanding of the potential of recovery and regeneration of the aged musculoskeletal system. Contrary to the previous belief that arthritic articulations represented damage, irreversible, we observe that when we provide therapeutic nutrients, consistently appropriate over time, frequently joint tissues show surprising capacity for adaptation, repair and even regeneration, partial. For many patients, this represents true liberation after years, sailing between equally unsatisfactory options of intractable pain or effects, significant drug collateral. For those who face the challenge of arthritis and the elderly, remember, the journey for healthier joints does not require immediate dietary perfection, but consistency and gradual progression. Start by incorporating 1 or 2 of these, overlooking your routine, and build from there, observing how your body responds and working in collaboration with your medical team to potentially adjust your conventional medications as your condition improves. And perhaps the most important thing, it's never too late to start. Be you newly diagnosed with arthritis or dealing with this condition for decades, its tissues, joints still have a remarkable ability to respond positively to nutrition, proper therapy. Each step taken without pain, each daily task performed with greater ease, and each pleasant activity resumed represents a victory, significant for your health and quality of life. The final message is of empowerment and hope. Its joints, even after years of degeneration and inflammation, may experience revitalization and function. improved when supported by proper nutrients. Through these 5, overlapping, you offer not only culinary ingredients, but a real, natural pharmacy that can guide your body towards regeneration and recovery, allowing you to fully enjoy life at any age. Which of these anti-arthritis overfeeding do you plan to incorporate first into your routine? Share your experience or questions in the comments below. Your journey can inspire others to take their first steps toward the release of arthritis after 60.